I thought I would talk today a little bit about businesses in general, our own business in particular, and the kind of message we want to give other businesses about the importance of moving with the times, innovation as being central to the future of business and the future of society. But an innovation that's based on ethical principles. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how DA over the last 40 years has tried to find and weave its way through this minefield that private sector approaches have set up over the last 2 centuries, and to try and see how we can demonstrate that you can do business better. I'm not sure we have succeeded yet, but if we don't succeed, I think the world will be a poorer place. So let me just start by saying I'm really trying to show that it is important to think about what we do and to think about it in terms of the impacts it has, not just on the individual entrepreneur or person working in a business, but in terms of the whole impact on society. Now, we can be very proud. Over the last 70 odd years, we've made, as a nation, great progress, and people live very well. There are lots of people, almost as many people as in Europe, who live well in India. I mean, we have shopping malls, we've got great cars, we've got all kinds of stuff. But the question really is this all sustainable? Is the world that we live in, which has poverty, pollution, population growing, all kinds of issues with biodiversity loss and species extinction, climate changing rapidly into a crisis, social breakdowns of various kinds, including terrorism and violence, financial systems in serious trouble, and the list goes on. So the question really is, it's all very good living in the 21st century, but there's also a lot of negatives with it, including urban chaos, massive pollution in our air and waters, poisoning our countryside. And there is a huge amount of overconsumption in some parts of the world and huge amount of underconsumption in other parts of the world. And you can see from these pictures how different kinds of people live. And this is what is true of the whole world is certainly true even more of India. There are, in a sense, 2 countries here in this space in South Asia, which we call India. One, around 400 odd million people, basically living pretty well, and about twice as many people who are living in various degrees of poverty and pollution. We call that part Bharat. And we've got to understand that both may coexist, but unless they are aware of each other, the future is very bleak. We have people who don't have drinking water, who have very little shelter, who have essentially a relationship with Mother Earth, which is quite almost as destructive as the rich do. When you talk about circular economies, one has to figure out the fact that we've lived in certain circular economies in poverty over a long period of time, but these are vicious cycles, not virtuous cycles going up. Climate change is a major problem: forest fires, droughts, massive desertification. According to UNEP, more than 10,000 square kilometers of land is lost to deserts every year in India. Species extinction. Here is a little flower called a rosy periwinkle, which grows in a small area of Madagascar. It has the only known source of cure for childhood leukemia, childhood cancer, blood cancer. So you can imagine that when this becomes extinct, how many people will have to go without that cure. Our own national animal, the tiger, battling for survival. Here's an interesting picture. There's one fish, one bluefin tuna sold for $1 million in Japan because of their thirst, their hunger for sushi. We have a sand mafia in India, which is something of the order of 500 or more crores business per year, because sand is running out. And it's not just sand and oil that are running out, it's food production, topsoil, phosphorus, which is essential for food production, fish, water supplies, uranium. You've heard about all these things, rare earths, which are going to be needed more and more for for solar and renewable energy and batteries. So we've got a huge footprint, a huge ecological footprint, which essentially is driving the impact of humanity on Mother Earth into the ground. And as you can see, over the last 50 years, 60 years, it has been growing rapidly. In fact, at the time of independence, India was quite sanely living on less than half of its resources. Today, it's living on almost twice as many resources as the country produces sustainably. You may well say, how can that be? Well, it can be because, as you all know, if you have money in the bank, which nature gave us, you can deplete it until you suddenly run out, and that's where we're headed. The other part of the problem is, one side is the environmental issues, and the other part is the equity issues, the social justice issues, the extreme poverty and deprivation issues. This graph shows in the red the number of poor people who are hungry or malnourished, which, as you can see, has more or less stayed static, going up and down a little bit over the years, and has been hovering around 200 million or so through the last 40, 50 years, 60 years. On the other hand, if you look at the blue line, that's the millionaires in thousands, not in millions, but in thousands. And you can see that close to 500,000 millionaires in India now, growing at a rapid rate. In fact, during the last 2 years of COVID lockdowns, the number of billionaires, the people who have more than $1,000 million in their bank accounts, have grown from about 130 in India to about 180, which is a phenomenal growth, considering the rest of the country was growing poorer and poorer all the time. The result of these both absolute wealth and absolute poverty, which we might call diseases, affluenza and povertitis, lead to other diseases. And we've just witnessed over the last couple of years how big these diseases are. And povertitis also leads to other kinds of diseases, social diseases like despair and alienation and violence. And we can see what happened over the last 2 years. It's that COVID didn't break the system, it just showed that the system is totally broken in the first place. And we will be seeing more and more people losing their homes and losing their livelihoods because they no longer have their lands and forests to live on. The world of underconsumption is a large one. There's probably 3 billion, maybe half the population of the world, living in areas where they need more energy, more materials, more water to live decent lives, and to have smaller families, and to have hope in the future, and to be able to stand their own in the world. Tomorrow's refugees will arrive with no passport or visa. They're going to come because of extreme hunger and poverty. They will come because of economic breakdown, civil strife. We're seeing it all happen today. Development projects, hydro dams and airports and roads, and urbanization and so on. And then there will be also more and more natural, so-called natural disasters, hurricanes and basically other things, which will keep moving people on, mainly because of things like climate change. And of course, ecosystem destruction generally and sea level rise is going to force people away from their homes in very large numbers. And where are they going to go? They're going to go to where it's safer. And that means that they will end up in places which are already pretty crowded. So the leaders of the world, 195 heads of state and government, came together in New York in 2015 and launched what are called the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 16 of these, plus one which is exalts everyone to be partners in this effort. These 16 goals range from poverty and hunger elimination all the way to structuring the world for better peace and justice and stronger institutions. And in between, it looks at all the issues of conservation, of nature, of productivity, of removing obstacles to people's improving their lives, and of course, better jobs and prospects for a better life. They are in response to a very lopsided model of development. Our model of development is based on neoclassical economics, which extols the virtues of growth, where GDP is king, where more foreign direct investment, more stock market activity, growth rates of the economy going up, rising foreign portfolios. These are the kinds of things that neoclassical economics does. And neoclassical economies, which are based on neoclassical economics, are based on hit and run on resources, mining and extracting whatever you can from Mother Earth, whether it hurts her or not. Resilience, well, who cares about resilience? And what did the future do for us? Why should we leave anything behind for future generations? What does nature count for? Does human happiness have any monetary value? These are the kinds of shibboleths that neoclassical economics is based on. And for them, for economists generally, who come out of the existing academic system, community and human well-being, these are not important. These are not monetized, and therefore they don't figure. And neoliberal policies, which are based on neoclassical economics, provide incentives to business for higher efficiency, for less regulation, for ease of doing business, for global markets, for austerity, but for the poor. Basically, it's for more things, higher consumption, incentives for business, and going for broke. And we live in a world today which is accelerating rapidly. It's changing very fast, and it's becoming more and more fit only for the very rich, like the people who live on this island in the Caribbean. That's really what the whole policies and economics and economies of the world are geared to promote. The world's income distribution was beautifully described by this champagne glass in 1991 on the UNDP's Human Development Report. It was the first report of its kind. And in 1991, they said that about 85% of the income of the world goes to about 20% of the people. And the bottom 10% or so really basically got nothing. Literally within 15 years, it had got so much worse that instead of a champagne glass, it looked like a bar stool. This is when people started talking about 1% and 99%. Already in the year 2007, when the economic collapse took place from subprime loans, this is essentially the graph that showed the kind of income distribution in the world. And, India is very fortunate, shall we say, to be more or less in the median. When you discuss the parameters for the world, they often represent pretty closely the Indian ones too. And here you could just substitute for the word world, you could substitute India. We basically have a huge overconsumption and affluenza at the very top of this, about, as I say, 0.1%, and the 99% virtually get nothing. Povertitis, underconsumption. The extreme disparity, the injustice, and the unfairness of a system shows itself up and manifests itself in the political economy. The rich get more power, political power. They buy their way into getting elected, and then they control the economy policies, and that controls the economy, and the economy is geared to making the rich even richer. And that is what's happening today. I mean, there's no reversal of this. And you don't have to be a Marxist or a communist to realize that that's not sustainable. That's neither sustainable economically, nor ecologically, nor in any form, socially or any other form. The societal diseases that we suffer from are really from these economic choices, and they result from the structural dysfunction of our political system. So we need to force the future concerns of governments and of business, but who's going to do that? Organizations like Development Alternatives and civil society are going to have to gain the strength to be able to talk and force concern about Bharat, the people who got left behind. Now, the solutions for a sustainable life or livelihood is essentially one that combines the three issues of environment, society, and economics. And then we sometimes call that planet, people, and profits. And prosperity is really what counts, prosperity of all. And in the intersection of all these three, we have sustainable livelihoods. Sustainable livelihoods are ones that are good for the planet, good for people, and good for the prosperity of the entire population. It has three dimensions: the people dimension, the planet or nature dimension, and the prosperity dimension. Now, what really we need to do is to define the goals, and the goals are that while we seek efficiency, particularly the rich want more and more of that, we also want sufficiency. And sufficiency comes in two forms. The people at the bottom end should have sufficient to lead a decent life. And the people at the top end should understand that sufficiency means that there is a limit to how much you can go on being greedy about. You need a certain amount to lead a decent and fulfilling life, and beyond that, you do not need to become more and more greedy. So we need to find ways in which to do that in the marketplace, which is that it should be desirable and acceptable. One of the issues that fundamental to all this is integrity, the countering of corruption, which is a factor that has really kept most of the countries of the world, including our own, down for far too long. This diagram, this logo, which I'm kind of proud because I designed it, says Lena and Dena. Neither should you give nor should you take. And we've really got to recognize that this is a very important symbol of the work of organizations like Development Alternatives. And the reason that's so is that if you're going to eradicate poverty and regenerate the environment, then you must have more equity, more social justice, more inclusion, more participation by the people in the lives and decisions that affect their lives, and transparency so that everyone knows what's going on. So now the buzzword is that we now need to go from a linear economy, which takes resources from the earth, makes products for itself, and then throws them away, to a circular economy in which we design our affairs and our production systems and our consumption systems to leave very little in the way of waste, because the waste of one becomes the raw materials of another. This includes ideas like mining in urban areas, getting all your materials from urban wastes, or at least large amounts of them. Industrial ecology, where industries become symbiotic by using waste of other industries. Resource conserving methods for urban design, new kinds of long distance transportation, for example, lighter than aircraft, huge reliance on industries of a different kind. Today's industries are based on physics and chemistry, and they are resource guzzling. They use up large amounts of resources and produce huge amounts of waste. Look at plastics. Plastics are great. Without plastics, modern life would be virtually impossible. I mean, whether you are in a poor rural household or in a rich urban household, plastics are pervasive, and they have really improved lives of people. But they're also totally destructive, because getting rid of the wastes, once they're no longer in use, has become a major global problem. Future industries are going to have to be based on disruptive technologies, which reduce the use of resources and produce fewer wastes. And the technology choices are going to be determined by questions like, for whom? Is it only for the rich billionaires, or is it for the vast majority of people whose lives need to be improved? With what? With what kind of resources? With what kind of financial supports and so on, and where and when? So the organization that we worked for, Development Alternatives, came up about 40 years ago with the idea of developing frugal technologies, not jugaad, not low quality, but frugal technologies that are good for Mother Nature, which are good for human beings and households and communities, and produce very few wastes. So we've done that in many areas. This is our headquarters in New Delhi, and this headquarters uses technologies that were developed in a sense for natural architecture, using compressed earth blocks, using wastes from thermal power stations in the way of fly ash, using demolition waste from previously used buildings, using stone dust from mines, which is a waste of mining material. And a large part of this building is, in a sense, recycled from or other uses. And the focus of the organization, which is on three major areas. One is generating income for people, an income that improves their lives and makes their lives decent, through action for clean and green environment, and through activities that empower communities. And in order to do that, we've developed over the years a large number of technology, policy, institutional innovations that make it possible, including new kinds of cement, a major breakthrough which uses far less energy and therefore emits far less carbon dioxide, new kinds of bricks, new kinds of water management systems, water filters for water quality, making charcoal briquettes from waste wood, better cook stoves, better machines to make building materials, energy systems, biomass-based energy, solar energy, and a variety of livelihood technologies. So all of these are basically ways in which the people of Bharat can improve their lives. New kinds of sustainable solutions. This woman would like to not have carry water on her head every day for miles, or pumping water, or cooking cooking in a clean environment. These are water harvesting structures. We call them check dams because they check the flow of water, which helps it recharge the groundwater. And it has actually a huge impact on the neighboring lands. It's one of the highest return on investments that one can make in a rural area. Livelihoods, including factories like this one for recycling and handmade paper, making the varieties of energy systems, using local biomass, for example. These weeds are turned into electricity at a commercially viable rate, solar power, and varieties of industries that become possible because of the availability of energy. In our organization, Development Alternatives, we do a lot to make sure that we report our impacts on all three of the sustainability parameters, on environment, on society, and on the economy. And every year we produce report cards which demonstrate the kinds of impacts we've had. These are in addition to the business impacts, which are, of course, viability of our organizations themselves. But these are the impacts in terms of the resources mobilized, the monies mobilized, the improvements in life delivered to people in terms of both of all the three things: so economic, social, and environmental. So I showed you these are possible ways in which to change the world from a very one-sided approach to making the lives of a few people very good and the lives of large numbers rather miserable, to creating a world in which everyone can benefit. And to do that, each one of us has to take responsibility for making the change by becoming the change. Thank you.